process of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh continues. Good afternoon and welcome to a Talking Points special. I'm Gilat Melamed. Yesterday we heard testimonies from Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, the first woman to accuse Kavanaugh of sexual assault, and we heard the testimony from nominee Judge Brett Kavanaugh. This afternoon we'll discuss what it all means. Judge Brett Kavanaugh's hearing took place yesterday on Capitol Hill. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford was the first to testify. Here to analyze it all is Analyst Payton May.
Indelible in the hippocampus is the laughter, the uproarious laughter between the two, and they're having fun at my expense.
You've never forgotten that laughter. You've never forgotten them laughing at you.
They were laughing with each other.
Welcome, Peyton. So that was the first time we heard Dr. Ford speak in public. One of the big questions going into this was, how credible of a witness would she be? Do you think she was a credible witness?
I do personally think she was a very credible witness. She had a very detailed experience. She was able to give the layout of the room that she was in. Obviously, also very key horrible events that happened to her in that room. She had very graphic experience and was able to share that in front of everyone. She didn't choke up during that. She could have, obviously, but she was able to stay strong through that. And I think along with that, her very detailed account was something that wasn't as questioned as much. There was question over what happened before and what happened after, but she's a doctor. She knows a lot about psychology. She was able to correctly identify her symptoms of what happened to her after the event, and I think that made it easier for a lot of Senate members to understand what were the implications of what was happening. So I don't think there was as much of a question about if she was credible or not. I think she really had all of her facts together.
Right, it certainly was a detailed account, but something the Republican senators on the Judiciary Committee were saying, why didn't we hear of this account earlier? A lot of them were angry with Senator Feinstein, saying she should have brought this information forward sooner. Do you agree with that?
I do think so. I think the political implications, obviously Senator Feinstein had a different agenda in mind, but I think putting this woman, Dr. Ford, in the center of everything was not correctly handled. I don't think Dr. Ford did say that she did not think her letter was going to be released. She didn't even want to release her name until people started actually coming to her house and coming to her workplace. And in that case, she thought it was her civic duty to stand up and say what happened to her and really name herself as the key victim in this case. So.
Yeah, now the Republican senators, they decided to go with an outside prosecutor to question Ford as opposed to, doing it themselves. Was this purely for the optics of what it might look like to have the Republican men questioning her as opposed to a woman prosecutor? Or do you think that the prosecutor was actually very successful in questioning Ford?
Well, I think it was a very protective move by the Republican Party. Obviously, as you said, it looked a little better, I think, to them having a woman question her instead of all the white male Republicans asking her questions about her sexual assault or allegations of a sexual assault by a white male. So I do think that it was a very calculated move, and I didn't exactly like how it worked out since they each only had 5 minutes, obviously. So the questions were getting kind of hard to answer, where she would have to stop in the middle of the 5 minutes, and it just wasn't there wasn't continuity to her question and response. But along with that, the Democrats obviously being more of like a support system, I think that maybe it would have been a little better if they had some questions that they wanted. I mean, some of them did ask factual questions, but it wasn't as much of a credibility account for the Democrat side as it was for the Republicans because they had an outside source. So I think that also played into that and tied into hearing what the actual story is instead of just being a support system.
Yeah, that's something both sides agreed on. They didn't like that setup of the back and forth with the questioning.
Yes.
Peyton, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
And here to break down the testimony of Judge Brett Kavanaugh is SCOTUS-focused analyst Gabrielle Caracciolo. Gabrielle, thanks so much for joining us. So we heard a very passionate Brett Kavanaugh yesterday in his testimony. In a way, I mean, we have not heard him speak like this before. Let's take a listen.
You sowed the wind. For decades to come, I fear that the whole country will reap the whirlwind. The behavior of several of the Democratic members of this committee at my hearing a few weeks ago was an embarrassment. But at least it was just a good old-fashioned attempt at borking. This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups.
Right, so we obviously are just listening to a very outraged Kavanaugh. He feels that he is being falsely accused, and he wants everyone to know that he says he is 100% innocent of all of these charges. So it's different than we've seen before. In his interview on Monday, he was a little bit more quiet, more reserved, but saying the same things. I did not do this. This is political. This has nothing to do with anything. I'm not guilty. I'm innocent. And so he was obviously very angry, but many people found that to be expected. Clarence Thomas was very angry, very similar demeanor during the Anita Hill hearings.
Yeah, and one of the things he used very heavily to say that he was innocent was these calendars. He spoke in great length about the calendars and, how he closely documented everything from that summer. Do you think he was successful in trying to prove what he says is his innocence by using these calendars?
Well, he definitely did clear up a lot with the calendars. In the days leading up to this, was saying, I have these calendars that I'm going to present. And a lot of people were like, who keeps your calendars from back then?
From in high school,
So he explains that his father was really big on keeping records and that these calendars were kind of a mix between a calendar and a diary. And so he does have them dating all the way back to high school, and that he used them as a calendar and a diary. He said that he felt the party that was described probably would have happened on a weekend, and that summer he was out of town most weekends, or the calendars showed that he was at other events. And so that was kind of how he was trying to prove through the calendars that he couldn't have been there. But he also said that he knew that the calendars alone were not enough, but the other people who were at the party, none of them were able to 100% confirm that these events happened. So he was saying it's that combination of the calendars plus the other people's accounts that should show that he is innocent.
And, from what I saw yesterday, I think the only person who might have been more emotional than Kavanaugh in his testimony was actually South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. When he was questioning Kavanaugh, he was very, very emotional, saying, the Democratic senators are saying this is a job interview. This is not a job interview. So, is it what the Democratic senators are saying, where this is a job interview, or is it something else more, along the Lindsey Graham lines?
Yeah, well, technically, yes, it is a job interview to see if he will get the job of Supreme Court Justice. But it also is taking on kind of this other scape when you bring in an accusation like that, because many people watching it looks like it's a trial. You have the defendant, in a way, going second, trying to defend the accusations going against him. So there is kind of that similarity, but it's not a courtroom. The Senate Judiciary Committee has no power to say, yes, he is innocent, or yes, he is guilty. And in a court, he is innocent until proven guilty. But this isn't a court. This is just a hearing to see whether or not he will become a Supreme Court justice.
This certainly is not a court of law. And I want to go back to Prosecutor Rachel Mitchell, like we were discussing about with Peyton. She really wasn't questioning Judge Kavanaugh at all. What do you think of the job Rachel Mitchell did specifically with Kavanaugh?
Yeah, a lot of the Republicans kind of took over. Again, they didn't really have Rachel Mitchell talk to Kavanaugh. The Republicans wanted to kind of use the time to say, hey, we feel bad for you. We like you. We think the Democrats are targeting you. And I think Rachel Mitchell did a good job with the time that she was allowed, but there wasn't as much time that she spent questioning Kavanaugh as she did spend questioning Ford.
And do you think his testimony yesterday helped his chances of being confirmed, or do you think it did damage?
I think comparing it to Clarence Thomas in the Anita Hill case, what people felt helped Clarence Thomas was how angry he was, how upset he got in saying that I am innocent. And so those similarities definitely still stand. You have two sides saying this is 100% what I believe. So I think we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and we'll talk later about that in the show. Gabrielle, thanks so much. And coming up, we'll overview the Supreme Court nomination process and what Brett Kavanaugh faces in the coming days.
Patriotism, It inspires passionate debate. It's worn like a badge of honor with good reason, because it means love and devotion for one's country. But what really makes up this country of ours? It's the people. To love America is to love all Americans. This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Love beyond age, sexuality, disability, race, religion, and other labels. Because love has no labels.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb. But if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Underage drinking and driving. The ultimate party foul.
It's the highest court in the land, but how does one get a seat on it? The president nominates who they want to be a Supreme Court justice, but then comes the confirmation process in the Senate. The House of Representatives does not take part in this one. Now, before the formal process begins, the nominee will usually have private meetings with various senators. This is not a required part of the confirmation process, but can certainly play a significant role. Some of these meetings, like the one Judge Kavanaugh had with West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, a red state Democrat, can last a few hours. Now, the confirmation process officially begins, though, with the Senate Judiciary Committee. The committee is made up of 21 senators and holds hearings where the nominee gets to testify, and these senators get to ask the nominee questions. Outside people, of course, can be called to testify, like we saw with Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. But this can also include, for example, people the nominee used to work with, like other lawyers and judges. The Judiciary Committee then votes on whether to send the nominee to the full Senate floor for the final vote. The committee also advises the rest of the Senate by sending the nominee with either a positive, negative, or no recommendation at all. Now, once in the full Senate, the nominee only needs a simple majority to get that seat on the court. Things are a little different now than they used to be, though. Senators used to be able to filibuster a nominee they didn't like, making the confirmation process tougher because 60 senators needed to agree to end the filibuster, allowing the vote to happen. The filibuster was eliminated in 2017 during the Gorsuch confirmation. Now, just 51 senators need to be on the same page. If they all vote yes, the nominee gets a lifetime appointment as a United States Supreme Court Justice.
I think it would be proper to delay the floor vote for up to but not more than 1 week.
Now, we just heard from Jeff Flake there at a Senate Judiciary Committee meeting earlier today. Michael, can you recap today's events?
So today the Senate Judiciary Committee met, and what they meant to do was see how they would advance the process of Kavanaugh's hearing and his process in general. So what happened was the committee voted 11-10 in order to hold a vote soon on Brett Kavanaugh. The date is not necessarily set by the committee, but all they did was vote yes or no on will the vote take place. Now, what happened that we heard right there in the SOT was that Jeff Flake proposed that the vote for Brett Kavanaugh should be delayed, and what should happen is that an FBI investigation should be ordered into Brett Kavanaugh's alleged crimes. Now, of course, Jeff Flake does not have the power to do that, neither does the Senate Judiciary Committee, but what it seems like is that Flake is going to make his and maybe some of those swing votes in the Senate, that their vote will be contingent on whether or not this investigation takes place. So the vote will happen. It'll probably happen in the next week, but what exactly happens from here is going to be in Mitch McConnell's hands.
Now, the delay of this vote, let's say, it is a delay of about a week or so, does this put the confirmation process in real jeopardy, or is it just simply a delay of the vote?
I honestly think it is just more of a delay of the vote. I think regardless of what happens right now, regardless of how long they're delaying it, regardless of people saying, like you said before, that an FBI investigation should be happening, like you said, you have to have an FBI investigation right now. No one says that is certain right now. So I think delaying the vote is simply just delaying the vote.
And remember, President Trump needs to call for this FBI investigation. The Senate can't call for that themselves. So they can say, oh, we're going to delay the vote so that the president can call for the FBI investigation. And then President Trump can say, no, I'm not going to do that.
And also, realistically, most of the Democrats in the Senate came out and announced that they would be voting no on Brett Kavanaugh before any of these allegations even came forward. And I think most Republicans would have been in the yes camp before these allegations came forward. So it's hard to see really much changing. It seems like there have been about 50 senators who have had their minds made up for most of this process.
Right. I mean, you said most Republicans would have been in the yes camp, but there are a couple of key swing votes. I mean, Jeff Flake was considered one of them. You still have Susan Collins, Murkowski. Even on the Democrat side, there are a few that could vote for him. What is the status of the senators who are swing votes right now?
Well, I think Murkowski and Collins could vote as more of a package kind of deal. Along with that, a lot of these senators are saying yes, but an FBI investigation, or no, but an FBI investigation. So it's one of those things where even if they are, like, at the end, it's going to be a yes or a no. It's not going to be yes and FBI or no with the FBI. So I think right now with the status of the swing votes, maybe they'll vote no, maybe they'll vote yes, because nothing is determined right now without this FBI investigation.
And a lot of these swing votes, they're really swing votes because they are moderates in a state that can go either way. And so it is going to be less about whether or not they think that Kavanaugh is guilty, whether or not they believe Ford, whether or not they believe Kavanaugh is qualified. It's going to be about how can they stay in office come November with the elections.
Michael, do you think there's any chance that Manchin says yes, or
I
any
think
other
there's a strong
Democrat
chance
says
that
yes?
Manchin
You think
says
strong
yes.
chance?
So polls came out today that West Virginia supports the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh by about 30 points, which is a very vast margin. And with Joe Manchin being up for election this year, this is an issue that's going to be very fresh in people's minds still in November. So I think Joe Manchin is probably the best chance for a Democrat to vote with the Republicans. The wild card here, of course, is Jeff Flake, and the reason for that is because Flake is not going to be running for re-election. He's going to just serve this term out, and then he won't be running again. So the thing that Mitch McConnell can hold over most of the Republicans is that in their future campaigns, the Republican Party can just kind of cut their funding, or they can try to not approve bills that they want. There are things that you can do as majority leader in order to kind of keep people in line. But since Jeff Flake isn't beholden to anybody right now, it seems like he's the one who kind of is most likely to say no, in my opinion.
Now, guys, final predictions. Does Kavanaugh get confirmed?
I think so.
I think so as well.
By a close margin.
All right, well, we'll have to wait and see, but thank you so much for your analysis. Thank you for tuning in to this Talking Point special. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at CitrusTV News for updates over the weekend, and tune into our full show Monday at 7:30. From all of us here at Citrus TV, have a good day, Syracuse.